that staff has two pages.
You'll catch on pretty quickly as we start going through the PowerPoint. You'll be like, oh my god, I don't have that slide, and then we'll just get you the paper. So sorry, stupid.
And I picked them up to dinner.
And I apologize that they're not stapled. I think I told you the logic behind that. When you send something to be printed by the print shop, or if I use the copy machine on campus, as a department, we're charged for the paper and for the labor, including the copy machine. The copy machine costs like 12 cents a copy or something ludicrous. Like, they always tell us, don't copy on the copy machine unless you absolutely have to. I haven't copied on the copy machine in like 10 years. I always print to a printer. And for some reason, the printer is free. We have to buy the paper. But the paper also has to be bought for the copy machine. So yeah, you can't count that cost down. But for some reason, printing on a printer is free, but the copy machine is not. So since you guys are the ones that absorb that cost in the long run, I figured just print on the printer. The problem is the printer can't staple. So that's where this confusion comes in sometimes.
Staples?
It can't, yeah, if you set it up to. Pretty slick.
And it can hole punch too.
They get a whole bunch too? That's why it costs so much. Because you're paying for all those bells and whistles I never use. Except.
I didn't know they did that. That's
Yeah.
technology.
Yeah, it's pretty sweet. The printers are still pretty stupid, but they're also free. So I try to use those whenever I can, whenever I have to print. So anyway, we are at the threshold now. Kate asked a great question earlier today, before class started. Can you ask it again, Kate? Because it's a very important one that's going to keep resonating with us. Go ahead.
I forgot when to use t-interval versus z-interval.
So a big general question is, when do you use the t-distribution versus the z-distribution? I changed that to distribution only because the stuff we're going to be looking at for the rest of the course involves distributions in general. So intervals are when you're trying to capture a parameter. So suppose you want to know, for example, the average weight of something or the average percentage of something. You want to build an interval around that thing, obviously. But then suppose you want to know if a drug is working. Like I banged up my shoulder pretty good last Tuesday going down and riding into work, and I've been taking Advil to kind of like quell that down when I have to. Well, how do I know Advil works? Why would I bother taking Advil?
Does the pain go away?
Well, why would I even take it in the first place? Take one step past that, yes. But why would I even have Advil in the house? Because the FDA at some point, this is going back, Lord knows how many decades now, the FDA at some point did a double-blind controlled study with Advil, or ibuprofen I guess is the technical name, Advil is the trade name, ibuprofen, to see its efficacy of pain relief versus placebo. We'll talk more about placebo today. So at some point, we wanted to see either on average how people measured, and I don't know how they measured this. I've got other studies. I don't have the ibuprofen data in that list I gave you. But at some point, some control group, some placebo was measured against ibuprofen, and it was found to be significantly different in the pain. So the idea is that wasn't an interval necessarily. It could have been just using the distribution to get a distance of difference. So the question was, how do you know when to use Z and how to know when to use T? And the quick, easy answer is, when do you use Z?
Percentage.
When you're dealing with percentages, thank you. And T when you're dealing with?
Units.
Make it more general.
Averages.
With averages, yeah. I love the units, and the units generally is going to be a safe bet, but you can average unitless things. So it's more like when you're trying to take an average of something versus trying to take a percentage of something. Does that make sense? And it's interesting because they are in some ways interchangeable. I just tested a hypothesis with my 243 class. I don't know if I shared this with you guys or not. I read an article about 2 weeks ago, why your Facebook friends have more friends than you do. Did I tell you about this? And the problem was we couldn't test it. Oh yeah, we did, because we talked about the bell not being there. And then you have to bump it back to percentages because you can't test it as an average. And that's the idea. Sometimes you can use your choice of both. We could have used both. Testing your guys' energy field results. I think your quiz is tucked in there somewhere, the in-class quiz you guys did. Okay, those energy field results could also be tested. No, they won't be in there. They'll be in the next pack. But the problem was, the nice part is we didn't have to test them as a percentage because your results fell in almost a perfectly beautiful bell curve. Which means we didn't have any outliers, no goofy skew, no one tail going off to infinity and a lump laying on one side. So there was no need to bump it back to percentages because we had a nice setup. Averages are notoriously tricky to hunt for because you have to have the set of conditions kind of just right. Whereas percentages are very easy to get. Just count. Yes or no, 1 or 0, off or on. blue or not blue. You can get anything binomial, essentially. But the problem with making it binomial is you tend to lose some of the interestingness of what you're trying to do. Like when we had to bump it back to the Facebook friends, all I could test then was, do they have more friends than me or not? I lose how many more?
I think you said detail.
Details, yes, thank you. Detail, and you have another word too, which I forget now. But yeah, detail, descriptiveness, yes. You lose a dimension of the measure. So you can say, yes, it's more, but you can't say how much more. Yeah, it's hotter, but you can't say how much hotter. And that's the problem. That's the problem, because then you lose any measure of practical significance. At least with a measurement, you can have a practical significance. Like, yes, it's up. Okay, it's up by how much? Well, you can't say by how much. You can just say that it's up. So there is a bit of a limitation, a lack of description, a lack of detail with Z versus T. But sometimes, if you can get that, it's better than not getting anything. And you can always go back in and get more data, and maybe more data is enough to kick it back into T range. I mean, so this is why we have two tools. Thank you for the question, okay? You guys take a few moments right now. I gave you the article sheet that had 2. There are 3 articles on it, and it's not complete articles. They aren't complete. I gave you basically the abstract, the methods, and then some conclusions on each one. One is low doses of caffeine reduce heart rate during sub-maximal cycle ergometry. Yes, that's something you're never going to read in a newspaper. They're going to say something like, coffee makes you like better, and totally lose all the nuance of the study. But that's the actual title of the study. Go ahead and read up to that. Read that one. Don't go to the green tea and the prevention of breast cancer yet. Go through the low doses of caffeine reduce heart rate.